The accidental intercept the coffee in Dr. Sarah Chun's mug had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the massive radio telescope display, showing patterns that shouldn't exist. The Edonkama Desert Observatory was silent, except for the gentle hum of computers processing signals from deep space. Sarah had been working the night shift for 5 years, listening to the whispers of distant stars and galaxies. Most nights brought nothing but cosmic background radiation, and the occasional pulsar. But tonight was different. At exactly 2:47 a.m., a signal appeared on her screen that made her heart skip a beat. It wasn't the random noise of dying stars, or the predictable patterns of natural phenomena. This signal had structure, purpose, and mathematical precision that could only come from an intelligent source. Sarah leaned forward, adjusting her glasses as she studied the complex waveform dancing across her monitors. The signal was broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating a layered message that was both elegant and sophisticated. Sarah had studied every known form of human communication, from ancient Morse code to the most advanced quantum encryption systems. This was none of those. The mathematical relationships within the signal were consistent with intelligence, but the encoding method was completely alien to human technology. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she began recording everything. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child, watching the stars from her backyard in California. First contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. But as she analyzed the signal more carefully, she realized something troubling. The transmission wasn't directed toward Earth. It was being broadcast across multiple star systems in a wide beam pattern, suggesting it was meant for recipients scattered across the galaxy. The signal repeated every 11.3 minutes with slight variations in the mathematical constants. Sarah recognized prime numbers, the ratio of pi, and other universal mathematical truths that any technological civilization would understand. But embedded within these familiar patterns were more complex equations that seemed to describe stellar coordinates, time measurements, and what appeared to be urgency markers. Working through the night, Sarah slowly began to crack the basic structure of the alien message. The breakthrough came when she realized the signal was using base 16 mathematics instead of the base 10 system humans preferred. Once she adjusted her translation algorithms, the message began to reveal its secrets. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. The signal was an evacuation order. The message contained coordinates for dozens of star systems and included what appeared to be population counts, fleet sizes, and evacuation timetables. Most disturbing were the repeated symbols that Sarah's computer translated as warnings about something called the awakening and total consumption. The sending civilization was in desperate flight from something so dangerous they were abandoning. Entire worlds. Sarah picked up her secure phone and called Dr. Marcus Webb, the director of the Global Space Monitoring Initiative. Webb had been her mentor for years, and one of the few people in authority who took her work seriously. The phone rang 4 times before Webb answered with a groggy voice. "Sarah, this better be important. It's 3 in the morning. Dr. Webb, I need you to get here immediately. I've intercepted what appears to be an alien distress signal. It's not meant for us, but I've partially translated it. There's some kind of galaxy-wide emergency happening." There was a long pause. On the other end of the line, Webb had worked in radio astronomy for 30 years and had never taken claims of alien signals lightly. But he knew Sarah was brilliant and careful. If she said she had found something, it was worth investigating. "I'll be there in 45 minutes. Don't contact anyone else until I see what you've found." While waiting for Webb to arrive, Sarah continued analyzing the alien transmission. The more she understood, the more frightened she became. The evacuation order referenced something called the harvesters that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind. The fleeing civilization which called itself the Kalari Alliance, had been fighting a losing war against these entities for decades. The signal contained tactical information about the harvesters that painted a terrifying picture. They were described as ancient machines that had been dormant for thousands of years before suddenly reactivating. They moved from system to system, systematically destroying all technology and consuming all organic life they encountered. The Kalari had lost half their territory in just 5 years of conflict. Dr. Webb arrived with 2 other scientists from the Global Space Council. Dr. Elena Vasquez specialized in xenolinguistics, and Dr. James Park was an expert in signal analysis. Sarah showed them her translations and the evidence supporting her conclusions. The 3 senior scientists spent hours verifying her work, and their faces grew increasingly serious as they realized the implications. "If this is genuine," Webb said finally, "then we're looking at the most important discovery in human history. An alien civilization is facing extinction, and they're broadcasting their final evacuation orders across the galaxy." Dr. Vasquez studied the linguistic patterns Sarah had identified. The mathematical structure is definitely non-human, but it's logical and consistent. Whoever sent this understands physics and mathematics at least as well as we do, possibly better. The urgency. Markers throughout the message suggest they're running out of time. Dr. Park analyzed the signal strength and broadcasting method. This transmission required enormous power to reach across multiple star systems simultaneously. Whatever civilization sent, this has technology far beyond our current capabilities. The fact that they're fleeing from something suggests whatever they're afraid of is even more powerful. The team worked for 18 straight hours, translating more of the alien message and trying to understand the full scope of the crisis. The Kalari Alliance had apparently controlled hundreds of worlds before the Harvester awakening. Now they were down to a few dozen systems, and those were being evacuated as quickly as possible. The signal contained coordinates for secret rendezvous, points where Kalari survivors were gathering. Sarah made a suggestion that stunned everyone in the room. What if we responded to their signal? What if we let them know they're not alone? The other scientists stared at her in disbelief. Webb was the first to speak. "Sarah, you're talking about initiating first contact with an alien species. That decision is way above our authority level. This has to go to the highest levels of government." But Sarah pressed on. "Dr. Webb, these people are dying. Their message isn't a greeting or a diplomatic overture. It's a cry for help from a civilization facing extinction. If we have the ability to respond, don't we have a moral obligation to try?" Within 6 hours, the observatory was filled with officials from the United Nations Space Command, the Global Defense Initiative, and representatives from major world governments. The translation of the Kalari message had been verified by linguistic experts from a dozen countries. Everyone agreed this was genuine alien communication, but they disagreed sharply about how to respond. Some officials argued for maintaining silence and using the information to prepare Earth's defenses in case the harvesters came toward human space. Others wanted to establish communication, but proceed cautiously. A few radical voices suggested that humanity should actively help the Kalari fight their war. Captain David Torres from the Earth Space Service was among those who supported helping the aliens. Torres was a veteran of the Mars colonial wars and had experience commanding deep space missions. He understood better than most the isolation and desperation the Kalari must be feeling. "We're talking about an entire civilization facing genocide," Torres said during the Emergency Council meeting. "These aren't invaders or threats. They're refugees running for their lives. If we have the technology to reach out to them, we should do it." General Patricia Hayes from the Global Defense Command disagreed. "Captain Torres, we know nothing about these aliens except that they're losing a war against something called harvesters. For all we know, the Kalari could be the aggressors in this conflict. we could be choosing the wrong side. Sarah stood up during the debate and addressed the assembly. I've been studying their signal for 3 days now. The linguistic patterns show genuine distress and desperation, not deception. Mathematical languages don't lie the way spoken languages can. These people are telling the truth about their situation. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, a decision was reached. The Global Space Council voted to send a response to the Kalari signal. The message would be broadcast using Earth's most powerful radio telescopes, combined with the orbital communication arrays. It would take enormous energy and international cooperation, but it was possible. The human response was carefully crafted by teams of linguists, mathematicians, and diplomats. It began with the same universal mathematical constants the Kalari had used, establishing that humans understood their communication method. Then it introduced humanity as a young spacefaring civilization from the Sol system. Most importantly, it offered assistance to the Kalari in their fight against the Harvesters. Asterisk. Captain Torres volunteered to lead humanity's first interstellar diplomatic mission if the Kalari responded positively. His ship, the HFY Horizon, was equipped with the latest human technology, including experimental faster-than-light communication, systems, and advanced defensive capabilities. 3 days after Earth's response was transmitted, every radio telescope on the planet detected the same thing simultaneously. The Kalari had replied. Their return message was brief, but filled with emotions that translated across species barriers. They were shocked, grateful, and desperate enough to accept help from a species they had never encountered before. The message included coordinates for a neutral hydro meeting point in deep space and technical specifications for faster-than-light travel that would allow human ships to reach the rendezvous. The Kalari warned that the journey was dangerous and that the Harvesters might detect any ship attempting to cross interstellar space. But they were willing to risk first contact if it meant finding allies in their struggle for survival. Within a week, the HFY Horizon was launched on humanity's first interstellar diplomatic mission. Captain Torres commanded a crew of 200 specialists, including Sarah Chun, who had become Earth's leading expert on Kalari communication. As their ship engaged its experimental faster-than-light drive, Torres knew they were about to change the course of human history forever. The journey to the meeting coordinates took 12 days, during which the crew intercepted dozens of additional Kalari transmissions. The news was not good. The Harvesters had accelerated their advance, consuming 3 more Kalari systems, while the aliens attempted to evacuate their populations. Time was running out for an entire civilization, and humanity was about to step into a galactic war that had been raging for decades. First contact and human defiance. The HFY Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the coordinates provided by the Kalari Alliance, and Captain David Torres immediately understood why this location had been chosen for first contact. The meeting point was a massive space station built into a hollowed-out asteroid, clearly abandoned for decades, but still structurally sound. It offered neutral ground where neither species would have a tactical advantage. 3 Kalari ships were already waiting when the Horizon arrived. Torres studied them through his ship's sensors and felt a mixture of awe and concern. The alien vessels were sleek and elegant, clearly built by a civilization with advanced technology. But they also showed signs of battle damage and hasty repairs, evidence of the war they had been fighting against the Harvesters. Dr. Sarah Chun worked frantically at her communication station, establishing contact with the Kalari fleet. The aliens had provided translation protocols during their exchange of messages, allowing for real-time conversation despite the vast differences between human and Kalari languages. When communication was established, the first words from the aliens carried a mixture of gratitude and desperation. Human Vessel Horizon, this is Ambassador Sethka of the Kalari Alliance. We are amazed that your species chose to respond to our Emergency transmissions. In 300 years of broadcasting distress calls throughout this galaxy, you are the first civilization to offer assistance rather than flee from the approaching danger. Captain Torres replied with careful diplomacy. Ambassador Zethka, I am Captain David Torres, representing the people of Earth. We intercepted your evacuation signals and understood that your civilization faces extinction. Humanity believes that all intelligent life has value, and we could not ignore your call for help. The two fleets approached the abandoned station cautiously, with weapons powered down but defensive systems active. Neither species knew what to expect from first contact, but both were committed to peaceful communication. Torres selected a team of 12 specialists to accompany him to the station, including Sarah Chun, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Marcus, Webb, and xenobiologist Dr. Elena Vasquez. The interior of the ancient space station had been designed by a species that was neither human nor Kalari. The corridors were too narrow for comfortable human movement, but too wide for the Kalari, who turned out to be smaller and more slender than humans. Ambassador Zethka stood barely 5 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to take in every detail of their surroundings. This station was built by the Vorthic Confederacy, Zethka explained as they walked through the dimly lit corridors. They were consumed by the harvesters 67 years ago. Their entire civilization, 12 billion individuals, harvested in less than 3 months. This station is all that remains of their culture. Sarah Chun felt a chill at the casual way the Kalari ambassador discussed genocide. Ambassador, how many civilizations have been destroyed by these harvesters? In the past century, 43 species have been completely eliminated. The harvesters show no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply arrive in a system, consume all technology and organic life, then move on to the next target. The Kalari Alliance represents the combined survivors of 6 different species that managed to escape complete destruction. They reached a large chamber in the center of the station where the actual diplomatic meeting would take place. The room had been designed for multi-species interaction, with adjustable gravity fields and atmospheric controls. Torres noticed that the Kalari had already activated scanning devices to study the human delegation, while his own team was doing the same thing. Lieutenant Webb presented the tactical analysis he had prepared during their journey. Ambassador Zethka, our specialists have reviewed the technical data you provided about the harvesters. These entities appear to be self-replicating machines with capabilities far beyond current human technology. What makes you believe that our species can provide meaningful assistance in your war? Zethka exchanged glances with the other Kalari representatives before answering. To be completely honest, Captain Torres, we do not believe your species can help us defeat the harvesters in direct combat. Your technology is approximately 400 years behind our current capabilities, and we have been losing this war. Despite our advantages, we invited you here because you were the only species brave enough to respond, and we wanted to warn you about the threat approaching this region of the galaxy. The blunt assessment stung, but Torres had expected something like this. Humanity was the newcomer to galactic civilization, and their technology was indeed primitive compared to species that had been spacefaring for millennia. But Torres had spent years studying military history, and he knew that technological superiority didn't always guarantee victory. Asterisk. Ambassador, you say you've been fighting the harvesters for decades using conventional tactics. What if the problem isn't that you need better weapons, but that you need different strategies? Humanity has fought many wars against superior forces, and we've learned that unpredictability can be more valuable than advanced technology. Dr. Vasquez presented her analysis of the harvester behavioral patterns. From the data you've provided, these machines follow very logical and predictable attack sequences. They prioritize high-technology targets and seemed to expect resistance from organized military forces. What if we approach them in ways they're not programmed to anticipate? Zefka seemed intrigued, but skeptical. Dr. Vasquez, the Harvesters have defeated every tactical system the greatest military minds in the galaxy could devise. They adapt to conventional strategies within hours of encountering them. What could your species possibly know that we have? Not already tried? Lieutenant Webb smiled grimly. Ambassador, humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've developed tactics based on chaos, misdirection, and doing things that seem completely irrational. Our military history is full of victories achieved by forces that were outnumbered and outgunned, but refused to follow predictable patterns. Torres requested permission to demonstrate human tactical thinking by analyzing a current Kalari military problem. Zefka provided data about a recent Harvester attack where Kalari forces had been defeated, despite having superior firepower and defensive positions. The alien commanders had followed textbook military doctrine, creating layered defensive lines and concentrating their most powerful weapons on predicted Harvester approach routes. After studying the battle data for 30 minutes, Torres presented an alternative strategy that shocked the Kalari delegation. Instead of meeting the Harvesters with organized resistance, a human plan called for scattered guerrilla tactics, false retreats, and deliberate chaos that would confuse the machine intelligence. Rather than protecting high-value targets, this strategy involved using them as bait while launching unexpected attacks from directions the Harvesters wouldn't anticipate. Captain Torres, Zefka said slowly, your proposed tactics violate every principle of civilized warfare. You're suggesting that we sacrifice military assets to create confusion and abandon defensive positions that took years to establish. Ambassador, civilized warfare is what got your people into this situation. The Harvesters are machines that analyze patterns and predict responses based on logical behavior. If we give them chaos instead of logic, unpredictability instead of doctrine, we might be able to confuse their programming long enough to find weaknesses in their systems. Sarah Chun added her perspective as a scientist. Ambassador, every intelligence, whether biological or artificial, makes assumptions based on past experience. The Harvesters have been fighting organized civilizations for decades, so they've optimized their tactics against predictable military responses. Humans survived and thrived on Earth precisely because we learned to be unpredictable in facing superior threats. The Kalari delegation requested time to discuss the human proposals privately. While they debated, Torres and his team explored more of the ancient space station. The architecture and technology they found painted a picture of dozens of different species that had once thrived in this region of the galaxy. All of them were now extinct, consumed by the relentless advance of the Harvesters. When the meeting resumed, Ambassador Zefka announced that the Kalari Alliance Council had voted to accept human assistance, despite their doubts about primitive human technology. The decision was driven more by desperation than confidence, but it represented humanity's first official alliance with an alien civilization. Captain Torres, we are willing to attempt your unconventional tactics against the Harvesters. Our military commanders will coordinate with your strategic advisors to develop new approaches to this war. But I must warn you that joining this conflict will put your entire species at risk. The Harvesters have never been defeated, and they will eventually target Earth if they detect human involvement. Torres looked at his team and saw the same determination in their eyes that had driven humanity to explore dangerous frontiers throughout history. Ambassador Zefka, humanity has always been willing to fight for what we believe is right, even when the odds seem impossible. We believe that all intelligent life deserves to survive, and will do whatever it takes to help you defeat this threat. The alliance was formalized with an exchange of technical data and communication protocols. The Kalari provided humanity with improved faster-than-light travel systems and defensive technologies. while humans shared their chaotic tactical doctrines and unpredictable warfare strategies. Both species knew they were embarking on a desperate gamble against an enemy that had never been defeated. 3 weeks later, the combined human-Kalari fleet engaged a harvester force at the Nexus 7 system, where the machines were attempting to consume the last major Kalari industrial world. The battle that followed would become legendary throughout the galaxy, not because of the advanced weapons used, but because of the completely unexpected tactics that confused the harvester programming. Human commanders scattered their forces, in seemingly random patterns, launched attacks from impossible angles, and deliberately created chaotic situations that the harvesters couldn't analyze quickly enough to counter, while Kalari forces provided disciplined firepower and advanced technology. Human ships served as unpredictable wildcards that disrupted machine calculations and created openings for decisive strikes. The victory at Nexus 7 was the first time in decades that the harvesters had been forced to retreat from a system they intended to consume. News of the battle spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring hope among species that had accepted extinction as inevitable. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior technology, but through the chaotic creativity that made them uniquely dangerous to enemies who expected logical behavior. Ambassador Zethka sent a message that was broadcast. Throughout human space, the species known as humanity has proven that courage and imagination are more valuable than advanced weapons. They answered our call for help when no one else would, and they showed us that even the greatest threats can be defeated if we're willing to think differently. The galaxy is a safer place because humans chose to care about the survival of strangers. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, watching the rescued Kalari civilians boarding transport ships bound for new homes and secure systems. The war against the harvesters was far from over, but for the first time in decades, the machines were retreating instead of advancing. Humanity had found its role in the galaxy as the species willing to do the impossible when others had given up hope. The signal that had started everything was never meant for human ears, but humanity had answered anyway. In doing so, they had discovered that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable, that any enemy was unbeatable, or that any cry for help should go unanswered. Asterisk.